Okay, let's just jump right in. The date is February 14th, 2026. So, happy Valentine's Day, I guess. At least to anyone listening who actually managed to get away from the hospital for a nice dinner.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot of love in the air for anyone working in healthcare IT right now.
No, not a lot of love lost between the medical world and, the cybercriminal underworld over the last 12 months. It has been, well, a relationship defined by toxicity, to put it mildly.
Toxicity is a very polite way of putting it. I'd call it open warfare, really. But it feels like one side is using these, I don't know, stealth bombers, and the other side is trying to defend itself with the rusty shields from the Middle Ages.
That's a grim picture.
Well, if 2024 was the year that everyone got scared, 2025 was the year the nightmares actually came true. I mean, we are not just looking at data breaches anymore. We're looking at a fundamental destabilization of how healthcare is delivered.
And the price tag on that destabilization is just. It's absolutely eye-watering. I was looking at the fresh numbers this morning, and the cost of a single breach in healthcare has hit a ceiling that I just didn't think was possible.
What are we talking about now?
We're talking an average, and I want to stress, an average of $7.42 million per incident.
That number.
Yeah.
It just keeps me up at night. And you have to realize that isn't just, oh, the hospital has to pay a ransom.
Right. It's so much more than that.
It's everything. It's the legal fees, the forensic investigations, all that lost revenue from canceled surgeries, and the massive cost of just notifying patients. But, the metric that really scares me isn't even the total.
It's the per record cost.
It's the per record cost. Exactly. For every single patient record that gets exposed, every file with a name, a diagnosis, a billing code, the cost is now averaging $398.
For one person's file.
Yeah. And to put that into perspective, if you lose a credit card number in a retail breach, the cost is a tiny fraction of that because you can just cancel the credit card.
Right.
You cannot cancel a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. You can't cancel a history of substance abuse. That data is valuable forever. So the cleanup is infinitely more expensive and complex.
It's the costliest of any industry by a massive margin. So today we've got a really specific mission. We are planting our flag in the ground on this date, February 14th, 2026, and we're going to look back at the absolute chaos of 2025, where these incidents surged by, what, nearly 55%?
No, we also have to look forward. Because the FDA and HHS have, for all intents and purposes, just dropped a regulatory nuke on the industry in the last 2 weeks.
It is a huge shift. We're going to get into the black box problem, why the machine that's keeping you alive might be 15 years old and completely impossible to fix.
And we're also going to talk about why your doctor is currently caught in this catch-22,
Right.
where they might get fined for being too secure, but also fined for not being secure enough. It's a mess.
It is a paradox, and it is messy. But before we wade into that mess, we have to give a massive shout out to the partners who help us make sense of all this data. I mean, if you are listening to this and thinking, I need to see the raw numbers on who is getting hit and how, you have to bookmark www.breached.company.
It's really the definitive resource for tracking this whole landscape.
It really is.
And for the CISOs and the security directors who are listening right now and probably feeling their blood pressure rise, there are tools that can help. I'd say check out www.cisomarketplace.com. It's just so critical to know what defenses are actually working in the wild versus what's just, marketing fluff.
Absolutely essential. Okay, so let's get into section 1. We are calling this the blast radius. And I use that term very deliberately because when we talk about cybersecurity in other industries, like, finance or retail, it's usually about money.
Right. It's about dollars and cents.
But in healthcare, we are talking about human bodies and the ability to save them. And there is no way we can talk about the reality of 2026 without looking at the long, long tail of the Change Healthcare attack.
Is the event that defines this era. It's our Chernobyl of digital health.
That is a very strong comparison.
Is it, though? I mean, think about the fallout. This whole thing happened way back in 2024, but the radioactive dust is still settling here in 2026. I think people outside the industry have forgotten just how visceral that impact was. It wasn't just, oh, we can't send an email. It was a complete economic cardiac arrest for the entire American medical system.
I was reading the American Medical Association's retrospective on this, and the personal stories are what really get you. We aren't talking about United Health Group's stock price. We're talking about the small family practice in rural Ohio.
The little guys.
The little guys. The numbers are just devastating. 80% of providers lost revenue from unpaid claims. 80%.
Let's just pause on that for a second. 80%. Imagine if you were running a restaurant or, say, a hardware store, and suddenly, for months on end, 80% of your customers just couldn't pay.
Yeah.
They ate the food, they took the lumber, but the credit card machine was just broken and there was no way to record the transaction. But in medicine, you can't just close the doors. You have an ethical obligation to treat people.
So what did they do? The AMA says 55% of providers had to use personal funds to cover their practice expenses.
That is the real tragedy of it. You had doctors taking out second mortgages on their homes. You had partners draining their kids' college funds just to make payroll for their nurses and the receptionists.
Oh, that's brutal.
They were burning their own life savings just to keep the lights on, all because a clearinghouse, a third party they had absolutely no control over, got hacked.
And then there's the 36% who saw claim payments suspended entirely. Just zero cash flow for months.
And this is why we call it a blast radius.
Mm-hmm.
The bomb went off at Change Healthcare's server farm, but the shrapnel hit the pediatrician, it hit the oncologist, it hit the local urgent care center. It proved that our digital supply chain is incredibly, terrifyingly fragile.
Yeah.
We've centralized so much of our risk at these massive clearinghouses that when one of them goes down, the whole country just grinds to a halt.
And the why behind it all. It is almost insulting how simple it was.
Oh, it's infuriating. It truly is. This wasn't some nation-state using a zero-day exploit that nobody had ever seen before. This wasn't Mission Impossible.
What was it then?
It was a lack of multi-factor authentication MFA on a legacy Citrix server. One server. Left exposed to the internet without a second layer of defense.
That's it. Just
Yeah.
no 2FA.
That's it. That one single oversight allowed hackers to just walk in the front door, elevate their privileges, and paralyze a huge segment of the U.S. healthcare economy.
It's like building Fort Knox, with thick walls and laser grids, but then you leave the back screen door unlocked and propped open with a brick.
That is the perfect analogy. And it's not just an American problem either. I want to touch on the Synovus incident in the UK because I feel like the clinical impact there was even more direct, even more immediate.
Right, the Synovus attack, June 2024.
Yeah, that's the perfect counterexample because it shows the physical danger. Synovus is a pathology partnership, so they handle all the blood tests, the tissue samples for a bunch of hospitals in London. When they got hit by ransomware, it didn't just stop the billing.
It stopped the flow of medical intelligence.
Exactly. The labs went dark.
And the hospitals had to declare a critical incident, which, in NHS speak, that basically means the house is on fire, send all the help you can.
They were canceling non-emergency operations. But you have to think about what that really means. A non-emergency operation might be a hip replacement for someone who's in chronic daily pain.
Or a tumor removal.
It might be a tumor removal that isn't immediately fatal, but absolutely needs to come out. Those people were just sent home, left to wait and worry.
And the blood transfusion issue, that's the part that just terrified me.
Right. So if you need a blood transfusion, the lab has to cross-match your blood type to make sure the donor blood won't, kill you.
Sure.
That entire matching process is digital now. When the system went down, they couldn't do it quickly. They had to revert to these slow manual checks. And so suddenly there was this critical shortage of O-type blood, the universal donor, because that was the only stuff they could safely use in an emergency without that full digital match.
So a cyber attack literally drained the blood supply of London's major hospitals.
Indirectly, yes. It created a bottleneck that had the same effect. And while the main laboratory database stayed intact, they did lose specific patient data. But again, the real weapon wasn't just data theft. The weapon was disruption. It was downtime.
And that really brings us to the landscape that we're seeing right now here in early 2026.
The tactics are definitely shifting.
It seems like it. We have these reports from Marsh and the Hype Journal that paint a really interesting picture of the last year. The raw number of ransomware claims actually went down by about a third in 2025.
It did. But you can't let that number fool you. The volume is down, but the severity is way, way up. It's a classic shift in business strategy by the criminal cartels.
How so?
Well, they are moving away from that old spray and pray model.
Yeah.
Hitting everyone and asking for $5,000 to what we call big game hunting.
They're looking for the whales.
They want the whales. They want the multi-hospital systems, the massive clearinghouses like Change, the big technology vendors. They want to hit targets where the downtime is so excruciatingly expensive that the victim feels like they have absolutely no choice but to pay tens of millions of dollars.
And the dwell time. I saw a stat from Cobalt's 2025 roundup. Healthcare organizations take an average of 241 days to identify and contain a breach.
241 days.
That is nearly 8 months.
Just try to get your head around that. Imagine someone breaks into your house, they hide in your attic, they're eating your food, listening to your conversations, reading your mail for 8 months before you even notice they are there.
It's unbelievable.
That is exactly what is happening inside these hospital networks.
And during those 8 months, they are not just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. They are mapping the network. They are finding the backups. They're probably reading the CEO's email.
Correct. They're doing reconnaissance. So when they finally pull the trigger and encrypt all the files, they know exactly where to hit you to cause the most pain, the most chaos. That's why the costs are so high. And who ends up paying for it?
We do.
We do, the patients. The data shows that nearly 50% of breached healthcare organizations raise their prices to cover the costs. So when you see your insurance premium go up, or the cost of that MRI suddenly jumps by 15%.
You're paying a cyber tax.
You are paying a cyber tax. You are helping the hospital pay back the ransom they paid last year.
It's infuriating. But let's pivot from the cost to the how. Because if they are in the system for 241 days, how are they getting in the first place? And this is where the technology side gets really interesting and, frankly, terrifying. We keep hearing about this agentic shift in AI.
This is, without a doubt, the biggest change in the threat landscape since the invention of ransomware itself.
What does agentic actually mean in this context? Because I think a lot of people hear AI and they just think of ChatGPT writing a bad poem or something.
Right. So previously, a hacker might use a tool to, say, scan for open ports on a network. It was automated, but it was dumb. Agentic AI means the software has a goal and it has autonomy.
Okay.
The hacker just says, here's the target organization, go find a way in, and the AI agent just starts working. It browses LinkedIn to find the system administrators, it scans the perimeter for weaknesses, it drafts custom phishing emails, it learns, and it adapts on the fly.
So it's like having a digital employee whose only job is to break into your company.
Precisely. And this has completely revolutionized phishing. We used to all joke about the Prince from Nigeria emails, right? The bad grammar, the weird typos.
Dear kind sir, please click this suspicious link.
Those are gone. They're dead. Now, we have phishing 2.0. The stats say about 82% of phishing emails now use AI-generated content. The AI scrapes your public profile. It knows you went to that conference in Vegas last week. It knows your boss's name.
So it can craft a message that feels real.
It drafts an email that says, hey, great seeing you in Vegas. Here's that slide deck we were talking about. The tone is perfect. The context is perfect. It is weaponized personalization at a massive scale.
And that's why phishing is still the #1 access vector. 16% of breaches still start there.
Because humans simply cannot distinguish these AI-generated emails from real ones anymore. It's a solved problem for the attackers.
And once they get that first foothold, maybe they steal a password, get a credential, they're in. And the stat that just blew my mind was this. At the start of 2025, compromised user accounts affected 74% of healthcare organizations that were running in cloud environments.
3 out of every 4. Just let that sink in. 3 out of 4 of these organizations had a compromised rogue account living inside their cloud. It's staggering.
So they get in through the cloud.
But once they are inside the network, they find the other dirty secret of healthcare IT, the legacy problem.
Ah, yes. This is the stuff that drives IT directors to drink. The MITRE research highlights this so-called 15-year cycle.
It's a fundamental hardware mismatch. In consumer tech, right, a 5-year-old laptop is basically an ancient relic.
It's a paperweight.
It's a paperweight. But in medical technology, a 5-year-old MRI machine is considered brand new. These machines are built to last for 15 or 20 years because they cost millions and millions of dollars.
You can't just swap out a CT scanner like it's an iPhone every 2 years.
Exactly. But the computer inside that CT scanner, it was designed 15 years ago. It's probably running Windows 7 or even Windows XP or some ancient version of Linux that hasn't been supported since the Obama administration.
So clinically, it works perfectly. It takes fantastic pictures of your brain.
Clinically, it's a modern marvel. But digitally, it is a ticking time bomb. The hardware literally lacks the RAM and the processing power to support modern security agents. You can't just install CrowdStrike or Sentinel on a device that only has 256 megabytes of RAM.
You'd crash the whole system.
You would crash the system that's keeping a patient alive. And this leads directly to the black box issue.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to patch it, you often can't, right?
Right. These are FDA-regulated devices. The manufacturer has to validate the device with a very specific software configuration. So if the hospital IT guy says, hey, I want to install this critical Windows security patch, the manufacturer might turn around and say,
if you do that, you void the warranty. And if that machine malfunctions during a surgery and someone gets hurt, that's on you, not us.
So they're paralyzed, they know it's vulnerable, but they are not allowed to touch it.
And the hackers know this. They absolutely know this. We have a specific vulnerability right now that illustrates this whole problem perfectly. It's called the GNU-Nettles vulnerability.
That's CVE 2026-24061. It sounds like a droid from Star Wars.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's actually an 11-year-old flaw in the Telnet protocol. Now, for non-techies listening, Telnet is this ancient way for computers to talk to each other. It sends everything in plain text, no encryption whatsoever.
So it's like shouting your password across a crowded room.
It's exactly like that. We stopped using it in corporate IT 20 years ago for that reason.
Yeah.
But in these embedded medical devices, these old Linux systems, inside infusion pumps and patient monitors, Telnet is still running deep in the background.
And this flaw lets an attacker bypass authentication.
If they can get on the network and talk to the device, they can own it. And because it's a black box, the hospital IT team might not even know that GNU-Nettles is running inside their infusion pump in the first place.
It's completely invisible risk.
It is. But look, while we are geeking out on AI and Telnet, I have to remind us that just stupid, low-tech mistakes are still costing millions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely. The dumpster diving. You can't forget about that.
The Filefax case. It's a classic. You can have the best firewall in the world, the smartest AI, but if your employee takes a stack of patient records, throws them in an unlocked dumpster, and they get sold to a recycling facility, you are going to get fined.
$100,000 settlement for that one. It's such a basic reminder that data is also just paper.
And then there's the ego problem, the social media unforced errors.
This stuff drives me crazy. The Yelp reviews.
It is shockingly common. A patient leaves a one-star review saying, Dr. Smith was rude and the waiting room smelled. And Dr. Smith, instead of just ignoring it, gets on his keyboard and replies.
Well, Karen, maybe if you hadn't shown up 20 minutes late with advanced gum disease.
Boom. HIPAA violation. You just disclosed her medical condition to the entire world. Manasseh Health Center paid $30,000 for exactly that. New Vision Dental in the UK paid a £23,000 penalty.
And New York Presbyterian, what was that, $2.2 million for letting a TV crew film patients without proper consent.
The lesson is so simple. Put down the keyboard. Do not fight with your patients on the internet.
Basic professional hygiene.
It is, but honestly, the government has looked at all of this chaos, the AI attacks, the legacy junk, the dumpster fires, and they've just decided they've had enough. 2026 is the year the regulator picked up the hammer.
And they are swinging it hard. We're going to get into the FDA and HHS crackdown in just a second, but first, let's take a breath here. Navigating this regulatory minefield is just impossible without the right data and partners. So we want to thank our sponsors, www.breach.company and www.citsomarketplace.com for supporting this deep dive.
Truly, I mean, if you are trying to explain to your board of directors why you need more budget for security, the data from breach.company is your best friend. And if you need to spend that budget wisely, you have to check the CISO Marketplace.
Okay, Section 3, the regulator's hammer. Let's start with the FDA, February 3rd, 2026. This is brand new guidance they've just issued.
It's called Cybersecurity in Medical Devices, Quality Management System Considerations. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it completely changes the game for the device manufacturers.
We're moving from a quality system to something called QMSR, Quality Management System Regulation. What's the big headline here?
The headline is the SPDF, the Secure Product Development Framework. For decades, the whole approach to medical device security was what we'd call bolt-on. You build the device, you make sure it works clinically, and then at the very, very end of the process, you run a security test. If you find some bugs, you try to patch them.
Security was a complete afterthought.
It was. The SPDF says no more. Security must be baked in from the very beginning, from the design phase. It's secure by design. And the biggest component of this is the SBOM.
The software bill of materials.
Think of it exactly like a nutrition label or an ingredients list on a box of food. If you buy a frozen lasagna, the box tells you it contains wheat, milk, tomatoes, preservatives, all of that.
Sure, makes sense.
For years, if you bought a multi-million-dollar MRI machine, the box just said MRI machine. The FDA is now saying you must list every single software ingredient. This machine contains Linux kernel version 5.4, OpenSSL 1.1.1, and yes, GNU-Nettles 2.0.
So when the next big vulnerability like Log4j hits, the hospital doesn't have to guess if they're affected.
Exactly. They can just search their entire inventory for that specific ingredient. It turns a massive, terrifying mystery into a manageable checklist. But the FDA is going even further. They are now demanding security views.
Okay, what are security views?
Specifically, they're requiring a multi-patient harm view.
That phrase alone just chills me. Multi-patient harm view. What does that legally require a manufacturer to do?
It requires the manufacturer to sit down and explicitly document the answer to this question. If this one device is hacked, could it hurt or kill multiple people at the same time?
That feels like a liability landmine for them.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But it forces the engineers to confront the reality of a connected network. If a hacker creates a worm that can jump from one infusion pump to the next one down the hall,
Suddenly you have 50 patients on a single floor receiving the wrong dose of medication simultaneously.
that's the nightmare scenario. The manufacturer now has to prove they have thought about that scenario and that they've designed specific controls to stop it from ever happening.
That is heavy, but it's necessary. And then you have this new cryptography requirement.
Yeah, no more rolling your own crypto. You can't have some brilliant engineer named Brad in a back room write his own special encryption algorithm because he thinks the standard ones are too slow.
Why not?
Because if Bob leaves the company, nobody knows how Bob's secret encryption works. It's unmaintainable. The FDA is ending the era of clever but brittle proprietary security. You must use standardized, proven, high-quality cryptography, period.
So the FDA is squeezing the manufacturers. But then we have HHS Health and Human Services coming after the providers and the developers with this information blocking rule. And this feels like a massive contradiction to me.
It is the central paradox of healthcare IT in 2026. On one side, you have the security team screaming, lock the data down, don't let it leave the firewall, encrypt everything.
Right.
On the other side, you have the 21st Century Cures Act and HHS saying, the data must flow. Patients have a right to their data, and they have a right to it instantly.
And if you don't share it quickly enough.
As of February 2026, the gloves are completely off. HHS is actively investigating information blocking. If you are a health IT developer like an electronic health record vendor, and you create artificial technical barriers to sharing data, you can face fines of up to $1 million per violation.
$1 million?
Per violation. And for the doctors and the hospitals, it's arguably even worse. They don't get a flat fine. They get hit in their reimbursements. They face reduced Medicare payments and negative MIPS scores.
MIPS, that's the merit-based incentive payment system, right?
Right. So if you block information, the government effectively cuts your pay for years to come. It hits the fundamental bottom line of the practice.
So just imagine being a hospital CIO right now. You are terrified of a breach, so your instinct is to restrict access. But if you restrict it too much, the government fines you for blocking access. What do you do?
It's a tightrope walk over a pit of alligators. And the message from HHS is crystal clear. Operational hurdles are no longer a valid excuse. You cannot say, oh, sorry, our system is old and it's just really hard to export that PDF. They do not care. If the patient wants their data, you must find a way to give it to them securely and quickly.
And speaking of enforcement, we should be clear that HIPAA hasn't gone anywhere. We saw some massive fines recently that proved the Office for Civil Rights is still very much awake.
Oh, they are wide awake. Just look at Solar Medical Supplies. They settled for, what, roughly $3 million.
And that all started as a simple phishing attack, right?
It did. A few employees fell for a fish. But here's the key takeaway from that case. The fine wasn't really because they got hacked. Being the victim of a hack is almost inevitable these days.
So why the big fine?
The fine was because they had failed to conduct a proper risk analysis beforehand. They didn't know where their critical data was. They hadn't done their homework. That is what the government considers negligence.
And then Touchstone Medical Imaging was another big one, another $3 million fine.
That was just sloppy.
Yeah.
Unbelievably sloppy. They left an FTP server wide open to the internet.
FTP file transfer protocol, I mean, that is older than I am.
It's ancient technology. And they had it configured so that anyone on the internet could access it anonymously. No password needed. It contained thousands of patient records. That isn't a sophisticated cyber attack. That is leaving your patient files on a park bench for anyone to read.
And then there is the Right of Access initiative. This one feels more personal. Phoenix Healthcare got fined. Why was that?
Because it took them 323 days to provide a patient's records to her daughter.
323 days.
Almost an entire year. The daughter was the legal representative for her mother. She needed those records, probably for care coordination or for legal reasons, and Phoenix just dragged their feet. We're working on it. Call us back next week. For months.
And the government finally just said, enough is enough.
Exactly. The Right of Access initiative is the government saying you cannot hold patient data hostage, either through malice or just sheer incompetence.
Okay, so Let's just recap where we are. The blast radius of these attacks is destroying finances and disrupting care. The attackers are using agentic AI to get in. The medical devices themselves are old and often unpatchable.
Hmm.
And the regulators are handing out million-dollar fines if you mess up in either direction. Pretty bleak.
It sounds weak, I know it does. But it's not hopeless. In fact, because the threat is now so high, the defenses are evolving faster than ever before. We really need to talk about building the digital immune system.
All right, section 4. The defense. How do we actually start to fix this? Let's start with those legacy devices. If I'm a CIO and I have 500 MRI machines that are all running Windows XP, and I know I can't patch them, what do? I can't just throw them in the river.
You can't afford to do that. So you have to use what I call the quarantine strategy. The technical term for it is network segmentation, specifically using VLANs, that's virtual local area networks.
Okay, let's break that down. But not just the technical what. Why is this so hard to actually do in a busy hospital environment?
So a VLAN is basically just chopping your big flat network into lots of little isolated islands. You put all the MRI machines on island A, you put the main email server on island B, and then you put a guard, which is a firewall between them, to control the traffic.
Sounds smart. Why doesn't everyone do it?
It is smart, but in practice, it can be a clinical nightmare. Because the MRI machine needs to talk to the scheduling server to know who the next patient is. It needs to talk to the picture archiving system to save the images it takes. If you segment it too aggressively, you break the workflow.
The doctor presses the save button and nothing happens.
Right. And then the radiologist is screaming at the IT guy. So doing this properly requires a deny by default policy. You lock every single door and say, nobody comes in or out of this island unless we have explicitly allowed it for a specific reason. It takes months of careful tuning to get right.
But it's the only way.
It is the only way to make a Windows XP machine safe in 2026. Because even if it gets infected with malware, the malware can't call home to the hacker. It's trapped on its own little island.
You starve the infection of its oxygen.
Exactly. And for that specific telnet flaw we talked about, the GNU and Undoodles one, sometimes you can't just turn off telnet because the device actually depends on it for remote maintenance from the vendor.
So you're stuck with that open door.
So you build a screen door. You use something called a login wrapper. It's a small script that sits in front of the telnet port. When a command comes in, the wrapper inspects it. Is this a normal, safe maintenance command? Okay, pass it through. Is this a known hack attempt? Block it.
So you're sanitizing the input before it hits the vulnerable service.
You're putting a bouncer at the door of the club. It doesn't fix the underlying vulnerability, but it stops the exploit from being able to work.
Now, what about the AI problem? If the bad guys have agentic AI, surely we have AI defenders on our side.
We do. This is the firefighting fire phase of cybersecurity. By early 2025, about 50% of healthcare organizations were using some form of AI for cybersecurity.
Only 50%. That actually seems surprisingly low given the stakes we've been talking about.
It is growing very fast, but you have to remember, healthcare is a conservative industry. The top tools being used right now are threat intelligence and data analytics. And the goal here is all about speed. Remember that 241-day dwell time?
The intruder living in the attic for 8 months.
Right. No human analyst can sit there and read 10 million log lines a day to find the one weird connection that indicates a breach. But an AI can do that in milliseconds. The entire goal is to move from being reactive, waiting for the ransom note to show up, to being proactive.
Automated containment.
That is the holy grail. The AI sees a laptop suddenly acting weirdly. Maybe it's trying to access a server in accounting that it never touches. The AI instantly kicks that laptop off the network. No human permission needed.
It cuts the handoff to save the body.
It does. But honestly, even with all this Star Trek AI tech, we keep coming back to the boring stuff, the digital hygiene.
You cannot out AI a bad password.
That really needs to be on a billboard somewhere.
It does.
It's the absolute truth. Look at Change Healthcare, the biggest, most destructive disaster in a decade. It wasn't caused by some super intelligent AI from the future. It was caused by someone not turning on multi-factor authentication. Just turning on MFA is the single most effective thing you can do to protect yourself.
And yet, we still have this massive security debt.
We do. The data shows that in healthcare, the fix rate for vulnerabilities found in penetration tests is only 57.4%.
Wait, can you explain that stat? What's that mean?
So you hire a team of white hat hackers to break into your system and find the holes. They find 100 security holes. They give you a detailed report. Healthcare organizations, on average, only fix 57 of those 100 holes.
They leave 43 known holes open for the bad guys to find.
Yes. Because they are overwhelmed. Because they don't have the staff. Because the system is too old and fragile to patch. That is security debt. It's like carrying a massive balance on your credit card. Eventually, the interest is going to kill you. We have to pay down that debt. We need to fix the holes we already know about before we worry about the exotic AI threats we don't know about yet.
So where does this all leave us? We're at the end of this deep dive.
I think we're at a crossroads. The attacks are smarter, they're faster, the costs are astronomical. But for the first time, I think the regulations, the FDA's SPDF, the HHS information blocking fines, are finally forcing the industry to grow up. We are seeing the painful but necessary maturation of healthcare cybersecurity.
And for the listener, what is the so what? What should they take away from all this?
If you're a patient, I think you can take some comfort. The medical devices being built today are safer and more secure than the ones that were built 10 years ago. But you also have to realize that your doctor is under immense pressure. They are fighting a war on two fronts, trying to cure your illness while also trying to defend your personal data.
It definitely puts the delay at the reception desk into a new perspective.
It does. And here's the final thought I really want to leave you with. In medicine, we have this concept of surgical hygiene. A surgeon scrubs in for every single procedure. They verify the patient, they count the instruments. It is a non-negotiable ritual.
They never say, I washed my hands yesterday, I'm probably good.
Never. Because if they don't follow the process, people die of infections. It's that simple. We demand that our doctors use the latest medical science, mRNA vaccines, robotic surgery, CRISPR gene editing, but we force them to run all of it on 15-year-old computer science.
It's a disconnect.
It's a huge disconnect. And until we start to treat digital hygiene with the same seriousness as surgical hygiene, scrubbing in every time, verifying every connection, checking every user, the infection rate in our networks will not go down. We have to start treating the network like a patient. And right now, the patient is in critical condition.
Treat the network like a patient. That is a powerful image to end on.
I think it's the only way forward.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, from the wreckage of Change Healthcare all the way to the new rules from the FDA. I want to say one last huge thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible and help us keep the lights on.
Absolutely. Please visit www.breach.company for the data and www.cisomarketplace.com for the tools. They are out there fighting the good fight every day.
Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there.
And keep scrubbing in.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.